Jyoti Singh was a medical student from Delhi, India, who was full of dreams and aspirations. She was known for her kindness, warmth, and determination. That fateful night on December 2012, she had just completed a long shift at the hospital and was looking forward to going home. Little did she know, the bus that she would get on that night would become the scene for one of the most horrific crime scenes in recent history. A crime that would not only shock India, but the entire world. What followed was a story of brutal violence, resilience, and the relentless fight for justice. Today we are diving deep into a tragedy that has forever changed the landscape of women's rights in India and around the world. The story of Jyoti Singh, whose life was taken in a way that no one should ever have to experience. But her story doesn't just end with the attack. The aftermath, the legal battles, the social unrest, everything that followed has shaped conversations about safety, justice, and gender equality to this day. It's past midnight, where the stories get darker and the air gets heavier. If it's your first time here, hi, my name is Jennifer, and we talk about scary, spooky, quirky, and in this case, tragic history. If that's something that you're into, stick around and let's get into it. Before we get started, I do want to take a moment to let you know that this is probably one of the harder videos that I've done on my channel. I found myself getting emotional doing the research on it. The story that we're about to dive into is dark and disturbing, and it's not for everyone. So trigger warning, we will be discussing sensitive topics such as sexual assault and other graphic content. So be good to yourself while watching. If it gets hard, feel free to skip this one and we'll catch you on the next one. So with that said, let's get started. Jyoti Singh was born into a middle-class family in India. Her parents, Badri Singh and Asha Devi, worked tirelessly to provide for their children, prioritizing education despite their modest means. Her father was an airport worker and her mom was a homemaker, and they had always dreamed of giving Jyoti a bright future, and she was determined to make them proud. From a young age, Jyoti was known for her intelligence, kindness, and strong work ethic. She had a deep love for learning and was especially passionate about medicine. She dreamed of becoming a physiotherapist, knowing that her work could help people in the future. Jyoti wasn't just dedicated to her studies, she was also a caring daughter and friend. Her parents described her as warm and full of laughter, someone who never hesitated to help others. And in her free time, she loved Bollywood movies and spending time with her family, and had big dreams of building a career that would allow her to give back to the society and her family. It's December 16th, 2012, and Jyoti is 23 at the time. She had just finished a shift at the hospital that she worked at and went to go meet a friend to go watch Life of Pi at the movie theaters. After the movie, it was around 8:30 at night, and this is when Jyoti and her friend Awindra Pratap Pandey were looking for a way home. They make their way to the street, and they had initially tried to find an auto rickshaw, but none were willing to take them to their destination. As they waited, a private bus pulled up to them, and one of the men on board, who was posing as the conductor, called out to them, saying that the bus was heading in their direction. They were skeptical at first, wondering why this charter bus was going in their direction, but the conductor assured them that it was just running this route that night, and when they peered into the bus, there were a few men who seemed like passengers who were just scattered throughout the bus. So this calmed them down a little bit and they got on. Including the bus driver, there were 6 other people in the bus that night. They pay a few rupees and they continue on their journey. As they're riding, they notice the bus is starting to take a weird route, and it doesn't look like it's going the right way. Awindra is starting to grow a little worried at this point, and he calls out to the bus driver and asks like where he's going. But before he can get an answer, the men scattered around the bus start snickering. One of them leans forward with a smirk and says to Awindra, "Where are you taking her out so late?" Another chimes in, mocking Jyoti, saying girls like you shouldn't be out at this hour. The laughter spreads among them, and you can hear it in their voice. They're just, not there for good reason. So this is when Awindra's unease turns to alarm, and he demands the driver to stop the bus, but the men don't take him seriously. One stands up, stepping closer, and another goes to the door and locks it. And that's when it hits them. This isn't harassment, it's a trap. As soon as Awindra realizes what's happening, he doesn't hesitate. He stands up and confronts them, demanding that they stop the bus and let them go immediately. But the men are already closing in at this point. One of them swings at him, and before he can react, another joins in. The fight turns brutal fast, and Awindra got a few good punches in while he's trying to defend himself and Jyoti. He's throwing punches, pushing back, but it is 6 against 1, so they overpower him easily. They beat him relentlessly using their hands and feet and even a metal rod. Blow after blow lands on his body, his head, and his face, and he's barely able to stay on his feet before they throw him down, kicking him until he can't fight anymore. He was gagged and had his leg broken. It was brutal. Blood is dripping from his mouth, his vision is blurry, and he can still hear Jyoti screaming. She's begging them to stop and pleading for mercy, but the men don't stop, and they then turn their attention to Jyoti. She fights back, she screams, she's flailing her arms, clawing and hitting at the men, and she doesn't even stop when they go to grab her. They slap her, punch her, and drag her towards the back of the bus. She begs them to let them go. She tells them that they don't have to do this, but they mock her, laughing and taunting both her and Awindra. They tell him he's worthless and he can't do anything to stop them. He's trying to reach her, but his body isn't moving in the way that he wants it to. He's experiencing unbearable pain, and every time he tries to get up, he's kicked down. Jyoti is still fighting, and she's doing everything that she can, but there's too many of them. Then one man picks up the iron rod, and what happens next is unthinkable. They take turns assaulting her while the bus is just rolling through the city. The driver doesn't stop, and they actually switch out so that the bus keeps going. Despite the unbearable pain, Jyoti fights back, sinking her teeth into the attackers in a desperate attempt to save herself. But this only enrages them further. They retaliate by biting her back and leaving deep marks all over her body as they continue their assault. Then they grab the iron rod and use it in a way so violent that it completely ruptures her insides. One of the men reaches inside her through her backside and pulls her intestines out, tossing them to the side while the other men watch. She began to lose consciousness at this time, but they wouldn't allow her the mercy of passing out, hitting her on the head, waking her up every time that they saw her dozing in and out. This continued for an hour, and after what feels like an eternity, the bus finally slows down. And they aren't done yet. They strip Jyoti and Awindra of whatever dignity they had left. They robbed them and then pushed them out onto the cold pavement. The bus speeds away, disappearing into the night, and Jyoti and Awindra are left there, barely alive. Being in an isolated area, hours pass before the highway patrol finds them and rushes them to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctors rush to stabilize Jyoti, and the moment they see her injuries, they're horrified at what they're looking at, and some of them describe it as some of the worst that they've seen. And despite everything, she continues to fight. And when the police arrive, she gives her statement. She tells them everything that happened. She described the bus, the men, the brutality that they inflicted on her, and Awindra is still dealing with his own injuries, backs up her account, detailing every sickening moment, and the police don't waste any time. Using the details that Jyoti and Awindra provided, they began tracking down the suspects. And the bus was a major lead because it wasn't just any vehicle, it was a privately owned bus that was illegally operating that night. The bus was actually caught on surveillance cameras, and this gives investigators a clue to its route. Within 24 hours, they locate the bus, and it's abandoned, wiped down clean, but not clean enough because there were still blood stains, and the forensic team gets to work right away. The police trace the bus back to its owner, leading them straight to the driver. And from there, the rest of the men began to fall like dominoes. After the police track down the driver, his name was Ram Singh, they bring him in for questioning. And at first he wasn't budging, but when they showed him all of the forensic evidence that was piling up, he breaks and he gives up names of the other men that were involved in the attack. And now the hunt is on. The police work quickly using phone records and known addresses to locate the suspects. They raid homes, search through neighborhoods, and rely on informants to track them down. One by one, the men are found, some even just hiding out at their homes, thinking that they can evade capture. Others try to flee, but the police catch them before they can disappear. The youngest of the group, a juvenile, was found attempting to flee the city. He was at a bus station, and they arrested him on the spot. Another man, Vinay Sharma, is picked up at his gym, and he just acts like he has no idea what's going on, acting as if nothing happened. The last suspect, Akshay Thakur, is found hiding at his village home, having fled Delhi after the attack. Within days, all 6 men are in custody, and here's a run through of the men that were involved. Ram Singh was the bus driver and the ring leader of the group. Mukesh Singh was his younger brother. Vinay Sharma was a gym assistant. Akshay Thakur, a cleaner who had recently moved to Delhi. Pawan Gupta, a fruit seller. And last but definitely not least was the juvenile, who was unnamed because India has some laws against releasing juvenile names, was the youngest and reportedly one of the most violent attackers. And I just want to say that some of these men had families. Like Ram Singh, the ringleader and the bus driver, he had a whole family, a wife and a son. And Vinay Sharma, Akshay Thakur, they also had families, though their personal details were less publicized. And the juvenile had left his home as a child. He was working odd jobs in Delhi. Mukesh Singh, Ram Singh's brother, lived with his family, but was largely estranged. And before the attack, these men were just out in the streets drinking, and they just decided to drive the bus around for fun, looking for people to terrorize. Before they actually attacked Jyoti and Awindra, they actually robbed a man before during the same night. So once in custody, the suspects were interrogated separately. Some, like Mukesh, initially denied involvement, but overwhelming evidence, including CCTV footage, the bus, the forensic traces, made their guilt undeniable. Vinay Sharma reportedly broke down in tears, claiming that he was led astray. Ram Singh showed no remorse, and he acted indifferent and unapologetic, and the same goes for the juvenile. Once inside Tahir jail, several of the men were reportedly attacked by fellow inmates, and Ram Singh, the gang leader, was especially targeted. In March 2013, he was found dead in his cell under mysterious circumstances. And it was officially ruled as a suicide, but his family and many others believe that he was killed by other inmates or even prison guards. The other attackers were also threatened and beaten, but were kept under high security due to the public and prison hostility toward them. As news of the attack spread, public outrage erupted across India. Protests broke out in Delhi, Mumbai, Kolkata, and other cities, and thousands of people took to the streets demanding justice, stricter laws, and better safety for women. The protests were intense, and some even became violent, with police having to use water cannons and tear gas to control crowds. Jyoti's parents, Badri Singh and Asha Devi, were devastated. Her father spoke to news outlets saying that she had always been their brightest hope, determined to lift their family out of poverty. And her mother, Asha Devi, later became a fierce advocate for women's rights and safety. The men's first court appearance was on January 7th, 2013, and the 5 men were formally charged with SAed, murder, and other offenses, while the juvenile was tried separately under the Juvenile Justice Act. Their trial was fast-tracked due to public outrage beginning on February 5th, 2013. So as we know, Ram Singh was found dead in his cell, so authorities claimed he hanged himself, but his family thought otherwise. The juvenile attacker, who was just 6 months shy of turning 18, was tried under juvenile law and sentenced to only 3 years in a reform home, which was the max punishment under the law at that time for juveniles. I was appalled reading about that part, and apparently so were others, because this led to widespread anger, which later resulted in the Juvenile Justice Act being amended in 2015. That allowed 16 to 18-year-olds to be tried as adults for heinous crimes. The 4 remaining attackers, Mukesh Singh, Vinay Sharma, Akshay Thakur, and Pawan Gupta, were all found guilty of SAed, murder, and destruction of evidence. And on September 13, they were all sentenced to death by hanging. The crazy part is that the convicts had little to no remorse. They even filed multiple appeals over the years to try to lessen their sentences, but India's Supreme Court upheld the death penalty, calling the crime barbaric and beyond human nature. In 2018, the Supreme Court rejected their final appeals, confirming their execution. After years of legal battles and delays, Mukesh, Vinay, Akshay, and Pawan were hanged at Delhi's Tahir jail on March 20th, 2020 at 5:30 a.m. And this was the first execution of multiple convicts in a SAed case in India. The execution was seen as a long overdue moment of justice, bringing closure to Jyoti's family and millions who fought for her. Despite the unimaginable brutality, Jyoti Singh fought to survive, and she underwent multiple surgeries, with doctors even removing most of her intestines in a desperate attempt to save her. She remained conscious at times, and that was when she was able to give the police her statements, but her body had endured too much, and after battling 13 days, she succumbed to her injuries, and on December 29th, 2012, at the hospital in Singapore, where she was flown for advanced treatment, the official cause of death was severe organ failure, infection, and cardiac arrest. Her death only intensified public outrage, and people mourned her as quote-unquote India's daughter. and her cause led to major legal reforms. Jyoti's case became a turning point for women's rights in India. The sheer brutality of the crime forced the government to take immediate action, leading to significant reforms. The Criminal Law Amendment Act of 2013 was a law that introduced stricter punishments for SA offenses, including death penalty for repeat SAers in cases leading to the victim's death, increased sentences for SA, stalking, and acid attacks, expanded the definition of SA to include more forms of sexual violence. Fast-track courts, so this was to delay or avoid delays in justice. So special courts were set up to handle SA cases more effectively and efficiently. Juvenile Justice Act Amendment of 2015, which we spoke a little bit about earlier, but now juveniles from 16 to 18 can be tried as adults for heinous crimes. And finally, the Nirbhaya Fund. The Indian government created this fund to improve women's safety, funding projects like emergency response systems such as panic buttons in public transport, more CCTV surveillances in cities, and safe city initiatives for better policing. Since Indian law prohibits revealing the identities of SA victims, Jyoti was given the nickname Nirbhaya, which means fearless in Hindi. The media and public widely referred to her by this name, symbolizing her strength and bravery in fighting against her attackers for justice. As we reflect on Jyoti Singh's legacy, we're reminded of the importance of never forgetting her story. What happened to her was horrific, but the courage and the movement she sparked will live on forever. This story is definitely a painful one, but it's also a story of strength, resilience, and the fight for justice. And her life may have been taken too soon, but her impact continues to shape the way that we talk about violence, gender equality, and justice. And while the public and her family may never fully heal from the tragedy, we can keep her memory alive by working toward a world where no woman has to endure what she went through. And that wraps up today's video. Thanks so much for watching. I know it was a tough one. If you found today's video interesting, be sure to give it a thumbs up. It really helps me out with the algorithm. And if you want to stick around for more, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video. And until next time, take care. Bye, guys.